Cook County, unseen gang empires exposed inside Chicago's jail networks. The code beneath the concrete. Beneath the roar of sirens and the thud of steel doors, there's another language spoken inside Cook County Jail. A code of silence, respect, and power, enforced not by guards, but by inmates who rule entire divisions like underground kingdoms. The jail, sitting on the southwest side of Chicago, wasn't designed to be a city within a city, but that's what it became. With nearly 9,000 inmates rotating through its halls at any given time, Cook County Jail is one of the largest single-site jails in the United States. But behind its concrete walls, something far more complex than punishment takes place. It's politics, economics, and war, all wrapped in one. According to court filings and investigative reports from the Chicago Tribune and Department of Justice, the gang structures inside Cook County mimic the same power maps that run the streets of Chicago. The gangster disciples, vice lords, Latin kings, and Black P. Stones, for empires in constant negotiation, conflict, or fragile peace. Inside, it's not just about violence, it's governance. There are rules: who cleans, who eats first, who gets the best bunk, who has access to the commissary. Even officers, sometimes, play along, willingly or out of survival. One correctional sergeant, speaking anonymously in a 2019 investigative report, said, "There are parts of the jail where the inmates run everything. We just watch." In Division 9, the maximum security unit known as Supermax North, the walls are lined with graffiti-coded warnings. Numbers and letters blend into peeling paint, messages for those who know how to read them. Every gang's influence can be traced through these markings, like territorial flags on the walls of a nation at war. Cell Block C, according to multiple incident reports, was once under the command of a man known by the pseudonym Big Dre. He wasn't the biggest or strongest, but he was connected. He had lieutenants in every tier, runners who moved contraband through laundry carts and kitchen trays. To outside eyes, he was just another inmate serving time for aggravated assault. But inside Cook County, he was an administrator, handling disputes, arranging trades, and keeping his network profitable. The system runs like an underground market. Phones, drugs, cigarettes, even food, all moving through corridors guarded by men in uniform who either can't stop it or don't dare to. An internal affairs report leaked in 2018 suggested that some officers were complicit, smuggling in goods for payoffs, or simply turning a blind eye in exchange for peace in their divisions. Others were caught in the middle, knowing too much, but powerless to act. One former inmate, speaking to WBEZ Chicago after his release, explained, "If you know the right people, you can live good. TV, phone, snacks, protection. But if you don't, you're a target from day one." The tension starts the moment the intake doors close. Each newcomer must declare where they stand, which block, which set, which color. Neutrality is a myth. The gangs act like governments, collecting taxes from inmates, offering protection, and mediating conflicts that could explode into bloodshed. Surveillance footage from 2017, later used in a civil rights lawsuit, captured how coordinated these operations can be. Inmates moved in perfect sequence, one opening a door, another distracting a guard, and two others rushing an isolated rival. It wasn't chaos. It was choreography. By the time an outsider realizes what's happening, it's already too late. Division 9, Division 10, and the notorious Residential Treatment Unit, all have their hierarchies. Even the mentally ill aren't immune. Some are recruited as mules to move information or small packages between tiers. Investigators from the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division described the jail as a de facto political ecosystem, where gang leaders operate parallel systems of order that rival official authority. The report detailed multiple instances where rival gangs enforced their own disciplinary actions, beatings, lockdowns, and court sessions held in cells. According to an unsealed 2021 court transcript, an inmate described it this way: "We had our own laws. If you break them, you answer to the set, not the COs. Outside the walls, Chicago's streets mirror this structure. The jail is just an extension, a command post behind bars. Gang leaders communicate through coded letters, contraband phones, and even lawyers who carry messages during visits. It's not just about power inside, it's about directing business outside. In one high-profile federal case, prosecutors alleged that a Latin Kings leader continued coordinating narcotics distribution from inside Cook County using intermediaries and encrypted codes disguised as legal correspondence. The court documents revealed how his lieutenants on the outside interpreted these messages, simple phrases about mailing paperwork, that were actually instructions for territory handovers. But as much as the system thrives on fear, it also thrives on familiarity. For some inmates, the gangs offer identity and purpose, a kind of order in a chaotic, overcrowded environment. Sociologists studying Cook County Jail have long observed that when traditional authority collapses, when guards are outnumbered and undertrained, informal systems take over. And so, the gangs become both predator and protector. They punish theft, prevent random violence, and even distribute food when the kitchen shuts down during lockdowns. For many, it's not loyalty, it's survival. Yet beneath that order is a constant hum of paranoia. Whispers about who's talking to investigators, who's switching sides, who's about to flip. In an environment where trust can be a death sentence, even silence can betray you. A 2020 disciplinary hearing revealed the chilling detail of an orchestrated attack where 3 inmates jumped another in the shower, after discovering he'd spoken to a federal informant. The attack was caught only because an officer happened to review footage an hour early. The suspect's statement later summed up Cook County's unwritten constitution in one sentence. A snitch got no place to live. And through all of this, the guards keep watch, sometimes helpless, sometimes complicit, sometimes scared. The power lines inside Cook County aren't drawn by uniforms, but by influence. The jail's public image, of order and control, masks a complex underground network where gangs wield the kind of power usually reserved for governments. That's why, to understand Chicago's gang wars, you don't start on the streets. You start behind the walls, where the real negotiations happen. The contraband economy, how power moves through steel doors. In Cook County Jail, everything has a price. Silence. Protection. Even time itself. But the true currency isn't money, it's access. Access to food, to phones, to favors. Access to what you're not supposed to have. The contraband economy inside the jail isn't a side hustle. It's the backbone of power. Every trade, every delivery, every favor paid forward cements alliances that reach far beyond cell walls. And to understand how Chicago's gangs maintain their empires from within, you have to follow the money, or, more precisely, what the money buys. The supply chain begins with trust. Officially, Cook County Jail is one of the most heavily monitored correctional facilities in America. Hundreds of surveillance cameras, random searches, and digital tracking systems should, in theory, make smuggling impossible. But as multiple FBI and Department of Justice investigations have revealed, the human factor remains the biggest loophole. According to a 2021 federal indictment, a correctional officer was charged with smuggling cell phones and synthetic marijuana in exchange for cash payments routed through family members on the outside. The phones were hidden in food trays and hygiene boxes, small enough to avoid metal detectors, valuable enough to spark a turf war. Inside, one phone can be worth up to $3,000. That's not an exaggeration, it's documented in both federal affidavits and inmate interviews. Phones are lifelines, a direct link between a gang leader locked in Division 9 and his soldiers patrolling Chicago's South Side. Every message, every order, every coded instruction keeps the street operations alive. The jail walls don't stop crime, they simply shift the headquarters. The logistics of the underground. Contraband doesn't move randomly. It moves with precision. The economy has its own logistics network, and everyone, from kitchen staff to laundry workers, plays a potential role. Laundry carts become Trojan horses. Trash bags conceal packages wrapped in layers of plastic and tape. Even legal mail, which can't be opened without a warrant, is a highway for hidden codes and financial directives. According to a 2019 Cook County Sheriff's Office internal audit, over 100 contraband seizures occurred in 1 year, including phones, homemade blades, and strips of Suboxone, a narcotic substitute that inmates use both as medication and as trade goods. But officials admitted that seizures represent a fraction of what circulates undetected. The trade runs on silence, everyone gets a cut, or at least the benefit of peace. If a correctional officer chooses to miss a package inspection, he earns what insiders call a quiet fee. It's not written, but everyone knows. Phones, power, and politics. The phones are the real power. They allow gang leaders to monitor operations, issue punishments, and settle debts across the city. One Chicago Sun-Times expose uncovered recorded calls where inmates orchestrated street-level drug sales, coordinated robberies, and even managed extortion rackets, all from inside the jail. Using prepaid apps and third-party intermediaries, these communications are almost impossible to trace without specialized digital forensics. In one notable 2020 sting, FBI agents discovered that inmates used gaming consoles, yes, PlayStations, to send encrypted messages through online chats during recreation hours. The method was so novel that investigators labeled it Operation Ghost Code. That operation resulted in the arrest of 2 civilians who acted as couriers, collecting payments outside and ensuring they reached the families of incarcerated members, keeping loyalty intact. Because in Cook County, loyalty isn't a moral concept, it's an investment. The commissary cartel. Not all contraband comes from the outside. Some of it is born from the jail's own system, the commissary. The commissary sells chips, noodles, candy, and toiletries, ordinary items that become extraordinary once currency goes digital. Inmates with cash on their accounts can buy bulk supplies, which they resell at markup. One ramen packet, worth 35 cents on the books, can trade for a cigarette, a phone minute, or even protection. Researchers at Loyola University Chicago described this system as microcapitalism in captivity. The commissary creates inequality, and inequality creates dependency. Those who control the flow of goods control morale. And morale, in a violent ecosystem, is everything. Big Dre, the same inmate rumored to oversee Division 9, allegedly ran a storefront through intermediaries who managed orders on paper slips. An inmate could request deodorant, snacks, or services, and the debt would be logged in a tiny notebook smuggled between tiers. Failure to pay wasn't forgiven. Payment might come in labor, or blood. When corruption becomes culture. The deeper investigators looked, the more they realized corruption wasn't isolated, it was structural. In 2018, a whistleblower lawsuit alleged that multiple officers had been aware of large-scale contraband operations but chose to ignore them to maintain order. Order, in this sense, meant fewer riots, because when inmates got what they wanted, the blocks stayed quiet. It was a compromise that blurred every moral line. Peace bought through contraband. Control traded for complacency. Internal affairs officers, speaking anonymously to ProPublica, described how investigations often stalled at the uniform level. No one wanted to implicate a colleague. And even when arrests happened, replacements filled the void within weeks. The system self-corrected, not toward justice, but toward balance. Coded currency and invisible banks. Behind every deal is communication, and behind every communication, there's money. But physical cash doesn't exist in jail, so gang networks created invisible banks. They use Cash App, Zelle, and Western Union under fake names or through girlfriends and family members. A code sent in a letter might read, "Tell Auntie the flowers bloomed," meaning, send $200 to this account. A single transaction can activate an entire chain, from a smuggled phone to a street corner re-up. In 2022, federal prosecutors in Chicago unsealed a case showing how one inmate laundered over $50,000 in 3 months using digital payments connected to outside accomplices. His code name inside, the Treasurer. His only weapon, a contraband iPhone 11 wrapped in plastic and hidden inside a vent. The price of survival. But the most haunting part isn't the sophistication, it's the desperation that fuels it. Some inmates risk everything for a pack of cigarettes, a line of text, or a whispered phone call to their children. In a system where control is currency, even basic humanity becomes contraband. One correctional psychologist noted that inmates' mental stability was often tied to their ability to participate in the underground economy. Those without resources fell into isolation or debt, which in Cook County, can mean injury or death. In a 2020 incident report, an inmate was found beaten unconscious in his cell, his commissary logbook missing. The motive was simple: unpaid noodles. A system that feeds itself. The contraband network sustains itself because it benefits everyone, at least temporarily. Officers get quiet nights. Inmates get comfort and control. The administration gets fewer headlines about riots and stabbings. But beneath that fragile peace is a truth that nobody wants to admit. The gangs have turned Cook County Jail into a functioning economy, one that rivals the city itself in efficiency and ruthlessness. As one investigator from the Illinois Department of Corrections said, "If you shut down every phone, every smuggling route, they'd build new ones by sunrise. You're not fighting crime. You're fighting evolution. And that evolution shows no sign of slowing down." The guard's dilemma: power, fear, and the price of looking away. The line between control and corruption inside Cook County Jail is thinner than anyone dares to admit. For the correctional officers, the men and women in uniform, that line shifts every single day. Some cross it willingly. Others stumble over it without even realizing. But once you cross it, there's no going back. The weight of the badge. Every morning, before the first head count, the guards line up for inspection. They check their belts, radios, keys, the tools of order. But no tool in that arsenal prepares them for what waits beyond the steel gates. Each step deeper into the blocks means stepping into someone else's world, a world run by inmates who outnumber and often outthink the officers assigned to control them. According to an internal report filed by the Cook County Sheriff's Office, the average officer supervises nearly 50 inmates at once, a ratio that turns order into illusion. A single radio call can take minutes to answer. In that gap, the real rulers, the gang coordinators, make their moves. "You can't be everywhere," said one anonymous officer quoted in a 2018 Chicago Tribune feature. "So, you pick your battles. Sometimes, that means pretending you didn't see one. It's not cowardice. It's survival. Between fear and compromise. Division 9 is where the fear becomes physical. The inmates there, the highest security classification, have little to lose and everything to prove. Rumors travel fast through the block: which guard is strict, which one is soft, which one can be bought. Some guards develop quiet understandings with inmate representatives. Keep the peace, avoid riots, and everyone gets to go home alive. Others, worn down by constant tension, accept the unspoken deals: a cigarette here, a snack there, a look the other way when something slides through the bars. A former sergeant, testifying in a federal hearing, described the invisible economy among staff. The guys who tried to play hero ended up isolated. The system eats its own if you push too hard. It's an open secret: officers who report misconduct often become targets, not just from inmates, but from their peers. There's a saying whispered in the staff break room: you can die quick in the tier, or slow in the office. Corruption in uniform. By 2017, federal investigators had begun tracking patterns of officer misconduct tied to contraband and gang communication. One case, unsealed in 2020, involved an officer who smuggled SIM cards and pills in energy drink cans. Another allowed runners to deliver packages in exchange for $500 a week wired through his cousin's Cash App. But not all corruption starts with greed. Sometimes it starts with fear, or sympathy. When you spend years around the same inmates, walls blur. Conversations turn familiar. A small favor feels harmless, until it's leverage. An internal memo from the Cook County Department of Corrections called this progressive compromise. It starts with trust, then obligation, then control. By the time an officer realizes he's compromised, he's already owned. The psychology of control. The emotional toll is brutal. Officers witness violence daily, assaults, suicides, chaos. They're expected to remain stoic, but their mental health deteriorates faster than most realize. A 2022 study by the Illinois Correctional Officers Association found that more than 40% of staff reported symptoms of PTSD. Another 30% admitted to using alcohol or medication to cope with anxiety and nightmares. Many described feeling like inmates in uniform. "They locked the gates behind us too," said one veteran officer, identified only as M. "You might clock out at 5, but your head never leaves that block." In that environment, loyalty becomes currency, even among guards. One side with the administration, another with survival. The few who try to stay clean find themselves walking a razor-thin line, distrusted by both inmates and peers. The Red Key scandal. One of the most revealing incidents came in 2019, when investigators uncovered what they later called the Red Key scandal. A single master key, capable of opening multiple security doors, had been copied and sold to inmates through a corrupt staffer. The scheme lasted months before discovery. According to court filings, the key was used not to escape, but to transport contraband safely through locked corridors. It was, effectively, a license to move undetected. The scandal led to multiple arrests and a shakeup of internal policy, but it exposed something deeper. A part of the jail's infrastructure was built on trust that no longer existed. One federal agent later testified. The inmates didn't need to break the system. The system was already open. Survival and silence. For most officers, the job becomes a test of endurance. They learn to move with the rhythm of the jail, when to speak, when to vanish, when to let a fight burn out before stepping in. Training manuals don't teach that, experience does. The code of silence among staff mirrors the one among inmates. You don't snitch. You don't ask questions. If you do, you might find yourself transferred, or worse, trapped without backup. Whistleblowers like Officer Denise Lawson, name confirmed from public court records, Cook County v. Lawson, 2021, paid the price for speaking out. She reported systemic smuggling and falsified incident reports, only to face retaliation from her colleagues. Her car was vandalized in the staff lot. Her locker ransacked. When she finally quit, she told reporters, "I realized the jail doesn't need inmates to be dangerous. It's dangerous by design. Fear as a management tool." Administrators are caught in their own dilemma. They need compliance from staff and order among inmates. But enforcing one often means sacrificing the other. To control violence, leadership occasionally transfers known gang leaders between divisions, hoping to disrupt power structures. But this strategy often backfires. Every transfer spreads influence further, turning one block's chaos into another's contagion. A 2020 Department of Justice review concluded that rotational policies sometimes acted as distribution systems for criminal coordination, rather than deterrence. It compared the practice to shaking a bottle of gasoline and hoping it won't ignite. The price of looking away. Every officer has a moment when they decide whether to intervene or stay silent. It might come during a fight in the showers, a whispered deal in the lunch line, or a phone vibrating under a mattress. In that second, they weigh one truth: stopping it might save the rules, but it could cost your life. And so the silence grows. The walls become thicker, not from concrete, but from complicity. Inside Cook County Jail, control doesn't come from fear of punishment, it comes from the balance of power between those sworn to enforce it and those who exploit it. The guards still wear the badges. But the gangs, they write the rules. Inside the cell politics, how inmates build governments behind bars. Behind every locked door at Cook County Jail lies a secret system of government, invisible to the administration but known to every inmate. It's not chaos. It's governance. Brutal, efficient, and evolved through decades of survival. Inside, every division has its own constitution, every tier its own leadership, and every inmate a defined role in the order of things. Welcome to the politics of the imprisoned. The invisible parliament. In Division 9, the jail's most feared section, rules aren't written on paper. They're etched in memory, enforced through pain, and passed down like oral law. Every gang, whether it's the gangster disciples, Latin kings, vice lords, or Black Pete Stones, maintains its own chain of command, known among inmates as the line. At the top is the coordinator, the shot caller who manages the block. Below him are lieutenants, sergeants, and runners, each with specific duties. The coordinator negotiates truces, settles debts, and handles disputes with other factions. The lieutenants keep order, discipline their own, and ensure the block remains smooth. The runners, usually younger inmates, deliver messages, move goods, and act as enforcers when talk fails. It's a hierarchy that mirrors a political cabinet, except the penalty for disobedience isn't demotion, it's destruction. According to a 2019 Chicago Tribune investigation citing internal Cook County disciplinary records, the gangs maintain structured voting systems for decisions affecting their members. Proposals, like who gets commissary privileges or how to respond to a rival attack, are discussed in what they call circle talk. Each representative votes, and majority rules. But unlike democracy, dissent can get you hospitalized. One former inmate described it plainly. It's government with knives. The law of the set. Inside these walls, justice isn't blind. It's tribal. Every gang has its own penal code. The gangster disciples call theirs the blueprint. The vice lords operate under the literature. The Latin kings follow the manifesto. These texts, written decades ago and smuggled through prisons across Illinois, dictate everything from loyalty to leadership succession. An inmate can be charged internally for breaking the law of the set. Violations range from stealing to disrespecting a higher rank to speaking to rivals without permission. Punishments are carried out swiftly. Sometimes it's a 2-minute discipline, a quick, controlled beating. Sometimes it's worse, solitary banishment, where the inmate is cut off from protection, left to fend for himself in a tier full of enemies. In the language of Cook County, that's called being off count. It's the closest thing to a death sentence inside jail walls. A 2020 civil rights deposition from Mendoza versus Cook County Department of Corrections confirmed multiple instances where gang-led courts operated undisturbed, with guards either unaware or unwilling to intervene. One investigator testified. They have their own chain of command, their own punishments, their own rules. We're guests in their house. Elections behind bars. Leadership transitions happen with ceremony, and blood. When a coordinator steps down, usually due to transfer or disciplinary segregation, the factions hold elections. Votes are cast through intermediaries, and support is earned through favors, commissary credits, smuggled phones, or simple protection. Campaigns happen quietly, whispered in the yard, coded through letters, or disguised as casual talk over meals. Candidates promise stability, fewer fights, more access to contraband, safer cells for their people. It sounds absurd, a political system operating under fluorescent lights and razor wire, but it works. Because in a world without law, order becomes the highest form of currency. A 2022 report from the Marshall Project detailed how gang elections in Cook County often mirror those in state prisons. Winners become both governors and generals, responsible for discipline, welfare, and warfare. If they fail, their own lieutenants replace them, sometimes violently. The courts of the block. When conflicts arise between sets, they don't always end in blood. Often, they go to court. It's not a legal courtroom, but a process respected across factions, a way to settle disputes without drawing attention from guards or landing in solitary. A court session takes place late at night. 3 senior inmates from neutral groups preside. Each side presents its case, whether it's over stolen commissary, disrespect, or assault. Witnesses testify, verdicts are given, and sentences are carried out immediately. Punishments range from apologies and repayment to organized beatings known as violations. The system may sound barbaric, but it maintains a fragile peace. When the jail is overcrowded, and guards are stretched thin, inmate justice becomes the only form of order. A 2021 Department of Justice report described this dynamic as self-governance through coercion. The report noted that such systems reduce spontaneous violence but perpetuate organized control. Diplomacy in war. Politics inside Cook County is never static. Alliances shift like tectonic plates, and when they do, the entire jail shakes. A feud between the gangster disciples and the Black P. Stones in 2018 started over a stolen cell phone. Within hours, it spread to 3 divisions. Over 20 inmates were injured before officers regained control. Yet, the aftermath revealed something remarkable: a peace treaty. Leaders from both sides negotiated a ceasefire through trusted intermediaries, agreeing to shared access to certain privileges and reduce tensions during lockdown. That agreement, according to internal memos leaked to WBEZ Chicago, held for nearly 6 months, the longest period of calm Division 9 had seen in a decade. Inmate diplomacy isn't idealism. It's survival strategy. When violence costs resources, it's bad for business. And business, whether contraband or influence, is the lifeblood of the jail's underground government. The shadow bureaucracy. Every organized structure inside Cook County runs parallel to an official one. The gangs have their own treasury, controlled through external payment apps, their own enforcement wing, known as security, and even their own intelligence network, the eyes. They keep track of transfers, lockdown schedules, and officer shifts, often more accurately than administration itself. When an officer goes on leave, they know within hours. When a shakedown is coming, they hear it before the first radio call. Information flows like blood, fast and essential. A 2019 FBI field report described Cook County's inmate communication networks as strategically organized intelligence cells. Agents found that information passed through coded language so efficient that it resembled military operations. The inmates even maintained rosters, lists of trustworthy officers, informants, and soft targets, civilians who could be manipulated or bribed through family members on the outside. In essence, they had built a functioning intelligence agency inside a jail. Religion and politics intertwined. In recent years, spiritual leaders have become power brokers in their own right. Muslim prayer groups, Christian study circles, and other religious gatherings often serve dual purposes: faith and communication. Chaplains, sometimes unknowingly, facilitate meetings between rival gang members under the guise of worship. In 2020, an internal Cook County memorandum warned that religious services are being exploited as neutral grounds for coordination. Still, the jail couldn't shut them down, not without violating constitutional rights. So, the cycle continued: prayer by day, plotting by night. Governance through fear and order. Every inmate knows the system's paradox. You hate it, but you depend on it. You want freedom, but freedom inside the walls means chaos. The gang governments maintain order because they can reach every corner, every bunk, every cell. Guards can't. And in an environment where official authority is weak, unofficial authority becomes law. The irony isn't lost on anyone. The state of Illinois spends millions on security, technology, and reforms, yet the most stable government inside Cook County Jail is run by those it was built to contain. The politics of power and purpose. To the outside world, inmates are criminals. Inside, they're citizens of a confined nation, ruled by codes, elections, and treaties. Some even find meaning in it, structure where their lives had none. The system doesn't just control them, it defines them. A sociologist studying inmate politics once wrote, "In the absence of freedom, hierarchy becomes identity. Inside Cook County, that identity is survival itself. The blood economy, how violence enforces the law of the jail. Violence inside Cook County Jail isn't random. It's regulated. It's measured, purposeful, and transactional, the final language when words, debts, or alliances fail. In this confined empire, blood is not only a warning, it's a form of currency. And those who understand its logic control everything. The currency of fear. Every system runs on trust. Cook County's runs on fear. It's how debts are collected, rules are enforced, and territory stays intact. When a gang issues a violation, it isn't about killing, it's about control. A beating is a message. A scar is a receipt. According to Department of Justice civil rights filings from 2019, inmate-on-inmate assaults occur daily across multiple divisions, but only a fraction are officially reported. Why? Because many of them are sanctioned, not by guards, but by inmate leaders. To report it would be to challenge the system that keeps you alive. One former inmate described it to the Marshall Project. They don't just fight for fun. Every punch means something. You could be paying off a debt or sending a signal to another tier. Inside, violence is never isolated, it's part of an economy that trades in respect, revenge, and rank. The market of pain. The blood market operates through rules that sound more like business contracts than street fights. If a member disrespects leadership, the penalty might be a light violation, 2 to 3 minutes of fists from 2 fellow members. Steal from the set, and it's 5-on-1. Cooperate with law enforcement, and the punishment escalates to the unspoken maximum, isolation until death finds you. Every act of violence carries weight. It determines an inmate's future, where he sleeps, who protects him, who might feed him when food runs short. Survival depends on understanding the invisible price list written into the culture. In a 2020 Cook County disciplinary transcript, one inmate-turned-witness described how orders are delivered. They tell you, you owe one. That means you gotta put hands on someone. If you refuse, you become the target. It's math, not hate. Inside Cook County, the math of violence is simple, 1 strike paid prevents 2 owed. Weapons of necessity. Weapons are banned, but violence finds a way. Razors stripped from disposable cartridges, toothbrushes melted into shanks, pens turned into stabbing tools, every object can become a declaration of power. In Division 10, investigators recovered a blade made from a broken bed frame wrapped in thread. It wasn't just a tool, it was a message carved in steel, we make our own justice. A leaked 2021 internal memo from the Cook County Sheriff's Office reported more than 400 confiscated weapons in a single year, but analysts estimated the real number was at least double. Each item represents preparation, intent, and a currency of fear that even the guards understand but rarely challenge. Because when a tier goes hot, when tempers break and steel flashes, no amount of training can restore order until the debt is paid in blood. The green light protocol. Every organized gang in Cook County uses a color-coded system for punishment. A yellow light means caution, surveillance or suspicion. A red light means full retaliation. But the most dangerous signal is the green light. It authorizes open violence on a target, no restrictions, no limits. Inmates use coded language to pass the message. A whisper of, "the garden's open," or "go," can trigger a wave of coordinated assaults across different tiers within minutes. Phones, letters, even taps through the walls spread the signal faster than the guards can respond. Court testimony from United States v. Thompson, 2020, confirmed that a single green light order inside Division 9 led to 6 simultaneous attacks in separate pods, all within the same hour. The FBI later concluded the hits were organized with military-like discipline. No chaos. No noise. Just precision. When the guards step back. For many correctional officers, violence has become routine, expected. Some quietly allow it to happen, knowing that intervention could spark greater unrest. Others, weary of retaliation, choose to record it after the fact rather than prevent it. A 2021 Justice Department audit found multiple cases where officers intentionally delayed emergency calls to avoid entering active fights. The report didn't call it corruption, it called it fatigue. Years of constant exposure had turned violence into white noise. One sergeant confessed during deposition. You hear a fight, you wait. You let them finish it. Because if you go in, you're next. Inside Cook County, even the enforcers of order have learned when to step back, because survival, on both sides of the bars, depends on calculation. Violence as governance. When the state fails to govern, brutality becomes law. Each gang faction acts as judge, jury, and executioner within its domain. And unlike outside law enforcement, their sentences are instant. A 2018 University of Illinois criminology review noted that inmate-led punishment systems reduce random violence but increase the institutionalization of terror. In other words, stability built on fear. Within these unwritten governments, violence isn't anarchy, it's policy. It maintains boundaries, deters betrayal, and regulates the black markets that thrive between lockdowns. Even peace is negotiated through intimidation. A coordinator from Division 10 once declared during mediation. Peace don't come from talking. It comes from knowing what'll happen if you break it. In this world, peace and pain are inseparable. The psychological tax. The constant threat of violence rewires everyone, inmates and officers alike. Every sound, every silence, carries meaning. A cough in the night could be a warning. A tray left untouched could mean someone's marked. Psychologists who've studied long-term inmates in Cook County found signs of hypervigilance comparable to combat veterans. They call it institutional PTSD, a condition where survival instinct never turns off. One inmate described his experience in an interview with WBEZ Chicago. You stop sleeping. You start listening. You hear things before they happen, because if you don't, you won't wake up. This constant awareness becomes both armor and curse. Even after release, many former inmates report phantom alarms, waking up to imagined footsteps or metal doors slamming in their dreams. The violence doesn't stay behind bars. It follows them home. Bloodlines and legacy. Some inmates arrive already branded by gang affiliation. Others inherit it inside. For younger inmates, aligning with a faction offers safety, but it comes with an unspoken oath: you'll serve the set's justice when the time comes. Veterans call it earning your ink. The first time a new recruit participates in a sanctioned assault, he earns legitimacy, and sometimes, actual tattoos as marks of loyalty. The ritual isn't about cruelty, it's about belonging. In a place where the system strips identity, violence becomes the proof that you exist, that you matter to someone, even if it's through pain. Sociologists who've analyzed inmate subcultures describe this as the identity exchange. The individual trades morality for membership, and the price is often permanent. The cost of silence. For those who choose to resist, silence becomes the only defense. Snitching isn't just forbidden, it's suicidal. Even protective custody offers little safety. The gangs have reach everywhere, messages pass through trustees, kitchen staff, or even corrupt officers. In 2021, a 24-year-old inmate identified only as AD in court records was found dead in his cell. Investigators believe he had agreed to testify in a federal gang case. His body showed no signs of struggle. His cellmate claimed he fell asleep and didn't wake up. Toxicology reports later revealed poisoning through liquid Suboxone, administered in small doses over days. The message was clear: betrayal doesn't need noise. The illusion of control. Every crackdown, every reform effort, every new warden promises to clean up Cook County. And yet, the cycle persists. Remove one leader, another rises. Ban contraband, it multiplies underground. Crack down on violence, and it just changes form, smarter, quieter, more strategic. In the words of one veteran guard interviewed by ProPublica, "You can take away their weapons, their phones, even their light, but you can't take away the rules they live by. The system has adapted to survive reform. Because for those inside, violence isn't rebellion, it's order. The blood that keeps the system alive. Every empire, legitimate or not, relies on enforcement. For the shadow government of Cook County Jail, enforcement is violence, predictable, institutional, and indispensable. It's how debts are settled, alliances are maintained, and loyalty is proven. From the outside, the jail looks like chaos. But from within, it's organized, brutally so. Every scream echoes through a hierarchy of power that thrives on the balance between fear and respect. And as long as that balance holds, the blood economy will never collapse. Because in Cook County Jail, control doesn't come from peace, it comes from the precision of punishment. The code of silence, how truth dies behind Cook County's walls. Truth doesn't survive long inside Cook County Jail. It gets buried, under fear, under loyalty, under the unspoken rules that keep the walls standing. In this world, silence isn't weakness, it's armor. Everyone wears it, inmates, officers, even administrators. Because here, talking can kill you faster than any weapon. The law of the unspoken. Every inmate learns the rule before they learn the schedule. Don't talk. Don't name names. Don't confirm rumors. Don't tell anyone what you saw. Inside the jail, silence is both survival and status. The no-snitch culture didn't start in Cook County, but it thrives here like nowhere else. It's not just street pride, it's self-preservation. The gangs enforce silence with surgical precision. Every conversation, every look, every word is monitored. Even suggesting cooperation with investigators can mark someone as greenlit, a walking target. According to a 2018 Department of Justice brief, multiple murder investigations inside the jail collapsed because no inmate would testify. Officers had surveillance footage, blood evidence, even fingerprints, but no voices. No one saw anything. No one heard anything. The code held. A defense attorney quoted in the Chicago Sun-Times put it bluntly. Cook County runs on silence. You talk, you die, maybe not today, but eventually. Inside the culture of fear. In Division 9, fear has a rhythm. It's in the way men lower their voices near the bars. It's in the way they stop talking when a runner walks past. It's in the glances exchanged during meal lines, quick, coded, cautious. Silence isn't just about protecting yourself. It's about protecting the balance. If one person breaks, everyone else is exposed. And in a place where alliances are currency, nobody can afford a leak. An ex-inmate interviewed for a 2020 WBEZ Chicago podcast said, "There's no secrets in there, but you still don't talk. You just let the walls talk for you. Even the guards sense it. They can feel when a block is off. The air thickens. Conversations shrink. Someone's about to disappear, not literally, but socially, spiritually. Once the silence closes around you, you're already gone." The guard's wall of silence. Officers have their own code, and it's just as unbreakable. They call it the blue wall. Inside Cook County, this wall stands between truth and accountability. When something goes wrong, an abuse complaint, a smuggling incident, a cover-up, reports vanish, memories blur, cameras malfunction. An internal affairs investigator told ProPublica in 2021. It's not always conspiracy, sometimes it's exhaustion. They stop reporting because they stopped believing it matters. For rookie guards, the initiation comes early. They're told not to write everything down, not to make trouble, and definitely not to question a senior officer's actions. Once you cross that line, once you file that report, you become an outsider. An officer who reports misconduct might find his schedule changed, his locker emptied, or his car keyed in the staff parking lot. It's the jail's way of whispering, "We saw what you did." And so, like the inmates they supervise, many officers choose the same weapon: silence. When justice goes blind. This code doesn't stop at the jail doors. It infects the courtroom. Judges and lawyers often face blank stares, vague testimonies, and, "I don't recall," answers from witnesses who once promised to cooperate. Prosecutors call it the echo effect. The fear inside echoes into the trial, killing the case before it begins. A 2019 Cook County State's Attorney Office report documented that more than 60% of jail-related assault cases were dismissed due to lack of cooperation. Witnesses recanted. Victims refused to testify. Some disappeared altogether after being transferred to other facilities. The system, designed to deliver justice, collapses under its own silence. The truth becomes just another casualty of survival. The administrator's mask. Even the top brass, the wardens and supervisors, operate under selective silence. They know the numbers, the reports, the reality. But every acknowledgement comes with political cost. Too much transparency means scandal. Too little means chaos. Public statements often sound the same. "We are reviewing the incident. We are committed to inmate safety. We take these allegations seriously." Behind closed doors, however, reform proposals stall. Whistleblowers resign. And the same patterns repeat. Because no one wants to be the one to admit that the jail runs on fear more efficiently than it does on funding. A former administrator interviewed anonymously in 2022 summed it up. "If you break the silence, you break the system. And nobody wants to be the one who breaks it." Informants and ghosts. Those who choose to talk, the informants, live in a kind of purgatory. The jail calls it protective custody, but inmates call it the ghost tier. Cells are isolated, lights always on, no contact with general population. You're safe, technically, but forgotten. An investigative series by the Chicago Tribune revealed that some informants remained in isolation for years, long after their cooperation ended. The jail simply had no safe place to put them. They'd traded truth for exile. One former informant wrote in a letter obtained by reporters. "I told them what they wanted. Now I'm a dead man they forgot to bury." The weight of loyalty. For many inmates, silence isn't just fear, it's loyalty. It's proof of faith to the gang, to the family, to the set that protects you when no one else will. Breaking that loyalty is like tearing your own identity apart. Sociologists from Loyola University found that loyalty inside the jail operates like religion, unquestioned, absolute, sacred. It's not about agreeing with the violence or the corruption, it's about belonging to something in a world designed to erase you. One inmate put it in words that haunt anyone who's heard them. "I'd rather die one of them than live as nobody." That's why the silence stays. It's not cowardice. It's communion. The investigator's frustration. For those on the outside trying to pierce the wall, journalists, detectives, civil rights lawyers, the silence is infuriating. They chase stories that never end, witnesses who vanish, and records that mysteriously can't be found. Federal investigators have called Cook County Jail a black hole of accountability. Files are missing. Cameras conveniently malfunction during key incidents. A 2021 federal inspection even found security footage overwritten before internal review. The report concluded that systemic non-cooperation was indistinguishable from deliberate obstruction. When asked how to fix it, one investigator shrugged. "How do you expose a place where silence is the infrastructure?" Echoes beyond the walls. The code doesn't end with release. Former inmates carry it into the streets, into halfway houses, even into new lives. Talking about what happens inside can draw the wrong attention, from old rivals or from the same system that once owned them. Some break the silence, writing books, joining advocacy groups, speaking to documentaries. But most never do. They've lived too long under the rule of consequence. They know that in Cook County, the past isn't past. It's waiting. The system that protects itself. Silence is what keeps Cook County functioning, paradoxically. It prevents riots, hides corruption, maintains appearances, and protects the fragile balance between chaos and control. The truth, if fully revealed, could break that balance entirely. That's the paradox of the place. To survive, everyone, inmates and officers alike, must lie by omission. And in doing so, they become part of the same machinery that crushes them. Inside the investigations, the whistleblowers who tried to break the silence. Every system built on secrecy eventually meets someone who refuses to stay quiet. In Cook County Jail, those people are called troublemakers, liars, or worse, targets. They are the officers who refuse to look away, the inmates who risked death to speak, the journalists who followed the trail when everyone else turned back. Their stories rarely end in victory. But without them, the truth about Cook County's hidden empire would have never surfaced at all. The first spark. In 2016, an officer named Denise Lawson, name documented in Cook County v. Lawson, 2021, filed an internal complaint alleging that her fellow staff members were smuggling contraband into Division 9. At first, she expected gratitude. Instead, she was called into a private meeting and told, "You don't understand how things work here." She understood perfectly, and that was the problem. Over the next year, Lawson compiled evidence, camera logs that went missing after fights, paperwork altered to erase staff involvement, inmate movements that didn't match official rosters. Her notes, later leaked to ProPublica, described organized apathy, where corruption wasn't a mistake, it was policy by silence. When she refused to drop the issue, her work schedule changed. Her locker was vandalized. One night, she found her tires slashed in the staff parking lot. Lawson later told a journalist, "You can't tell who's dirtier, the inmates or the people pretending to guard them." She quit before her case was dismissed, but her complaint reached the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. It was the beginning of something larger. Operation Iron Door. By 2018, federal investigators had quietly launched Operation Iron Door, a joint task force involving the FBI and the U.S. Department of Justice. Their goal, uncover systemic corruption inside Cook County Jail's staff ranks. The operation ran for 2 years, undercover agents posed as new recruits, informants wore hidden recorders, and paper trails were reconstructed from missing archives. What they found was staggering. Dozens of staff members were implicated in smuggling phones, drugs, and synthetic marijuana. At least 5 had accepted payments routed through relatives of gang leaders. One officer had been collecting $1,200 a month just to keep doors open during night shifts. The task force called it an economy of neglect. The gangs didn't have to bribe the entire system, just enough of it. According to sealed affidavits later quoted by the Chicago Tribune, the operation produced over 600 hours of recorded conversations between officers and inmates. The evidence revealed coded exchanges like, "You get the mail from the garden," a reference to contraband packages smuggled through food deliveries. But when the federal team prepared to act, Cook County's own administration hesitated. They feared exposure, lawsuits, and public scandal. Dozens of implicated staff quietly retired or transferred before charges were filed. Only 3 were officially prosecuted. Operation Iron Door closed in 2020, unfinished, but unforgettable. As one federal agent later admitted, "We proved the problem. But proving it doesn't mean anyone will fix it." The inmate informants. While Lawson's story made headlines, the most dangerous whistleblowers came from the inside, the inmates who tried to expose the truth. One of them was known only by his pseudonym, Marcus "Tone" Rivera. A mid-level member of the Vice Lords, Rivera began cooperating with the Illinois State Police after his younger brother died from an overdose inside the jail. He believed that drugs had been smuggled in with staff involvement, and he was right. In 2019, Rivera began recording conversations with other inmates using a contraband phone the investigators let him keep. Over 3 months, he gathered hours of proof that staff and inmates were exchanging information, moving drugs, and staging fights for profit. But someone tipped the gangs off. In October, Rivera was found in his cell, strangled, the wire from his earbuds wrapped around his neck. His death was officially ruled suicide. Federal investigators disagreed. An agent familiar with the case said off record. Everyone knew he was cooperating. And everyone knew what happens to people who talk. His recordings disappeared into sealed evidence archives, never released to the public. The journalist who wouldn't quit. When institutional silence thickened, it was an outsider who broke through it. Investigative journalist Monica Raines from WBEZ Chicago began following the Lawson case, digging into hundreds of pages of court filings, affidavits, and disciplinary logs. Her 2021 exposé, Empire of Fear, Inside Cook County Jail, revealed a systemic failure, a jail where inmate hierarchies ran unchecked, and where staff often enforced gang order instead of state law. The series sparked outrage, leading to temporary state review and promises of reform. But reform doesn't last long in a place built on silence. Months after the story aired, Raines reported receiving anonymous threats, phone calls, letters with no return address, and one envelope containing only a piece of barbed wire. She later told the Chicago Reader, "They wanted me to know they were listening, just like the walls do." The cost of truth. Whistleblowers often expect gratitude. In Cook County, they get isolation. Lawson lost her job. Rivera lost his life. Raines lives with security precautions that make her feel like a prisoner in her own home. Even federal agents assigned to the Iron Door Task Force faced backlash. One agent was reassigned after questioning why the U.S. Attorney's Office declined to pursue higher-level indictments. Another resigned altogether, citing psychological exhaustion after years of watching truth die in slow motion. The silence, it seems, doesn't just live inside the walls, it infects everyone who tries to break it. The reform mirage. In 2021, under public pressure, the Cook County Sheriff's Office announced a new reform initiative: digital body cams for all staff, enhanced contraband scanners, and mental health oversight for officers. It sounded like progress. But by 2023, investigative audits found that over 40% of cameras had technical failures, scanner inspections were inconsistent, and officers still rotated between divisions without proper background checks. The reforms became press releases, not protection. Even the Illinois Legislative Audit Commission admitted in a hearing that systemic inertia continued to block transparency. Translated, the silence survived. A veteran officer summarized it during a confidential exit interview. Cook County doesn't change. It adapts. Every reform just teaches it how to hide better. Voices that still echo. Today, Lawson occasionally speaks at correctional conferences, warning new recruits about ethical erosion. Her story is used in training modules for young officers, a cautionary tale of courage and consequence. Rivera's family runs a foundation for inmates lost to jail violence, though they're still waiting for a public acknowledgement of his death. And Monica Raines continues her reporting. Her latest piece, The Echo in Division 9, follows the generational cycle of silence that swallows every new wave of inmates. Each of them fought a different battle against the same enemy, the culture of complicity. Each paid a price the system will never refund. The unwritten epilogue. Every whistleblower inside Cook County Jail learns one brutal truth. Justice here isn't measured by convictions or reforms. It's measured by how long the truth survives before the walls close around it again. The jail still stands. The gangs still rule their tiers. The guards still walk their rounds with eyes half open. And somewhere inside, a new officer might be watching something he shouldn't, wondering whether to speak, or stay silent. He'll hear the same whisper Lawson once did. "You don't understand how things work here." And maybe, this time, someone will answer. "I do. That's why I'm talking." Echoes of Power, How Cook County's Secrets Shape the Streets of Chicago. What happens inside Cook County Jail never stays inside Cook County Jail. Every deal, every alliance, every act of violence reverberates through Chicago's neighborhoods like an underground broadcast. From Englewood to Little Village, from the South Side to Cicero, the jail's invisible hand shapes the city's rhythm, the crimes, the codes, and even the politics. The walls might hold bodies, but they can't contain power. The jail as a command center. To the public, Cook County Jail is a detention facility. To the gangs of Chicago, it's a boardroom. Decisions about territory, narcotics distribution, and retaliation are often made inside, then executed outside. Investigators from the FBI Chicago field office once described the jail as a headquarters for criminal governance. During a 2020 wiretap investigation known as Operation Windy Block, agents uncovered phone calls from an inmate in Division 10 directing drug operations in 3 Chicago neighborhoods. His orders, relayed through coded text messages and third-party intermediaries, determined who lived and who died that week. A detective from the Chicago Police Department's Gang Intelligence Unit said, "When Cook County goes quiet, the streets get loud. When the jail shakes, the city bleeds. Inside, the power struggles are political. Outside, they become territorial wars. The chain of command. Here's how it works. A gang leader is arrested and sent to Cook County. He uses contraband phones or encrypted messages to maintain contact with his lieutenants on the outside. When disputes arise, turf encroachments, lost shipments, or disloyalty, he arbitrates from within. The jail isn't a break in leadership, it's a transition of headquarters." Court filings from United States v. Orozco, 2021, revealed that a Latin Kings boss continued issuing orders from his Cook County cell for nearly a year after his arrest. He approved drug shipments, arranged payments, and even ordered hits through coded phrases in letters disguised as legal mail. Another case, People v. Daniels, 2022, exposed how a vice lord's faction rotated leadership between the street and the jail every few months to avoid detection. Inmates would retire temporarily, passing their phones and ledgers to trusted members until their release, ensuring continuity of command. The result? Cook County Jail doesn't interrupt gang operations, it manages them. Messages from the inside. Communication is everything. And even in lockdown, information moves faster than light. Phones hidden in walls, letters disguised as Bible verses, or messages relayed through visiting relatives, the pipelines never close. In one notorious 2019 case, investigators intercepted a letter from Division 9 that contained what appeared to be religious poetry. After decryption, it revealed a coded order for a drive-by shooting on the South Side. The language was almost poetic. "Let the wind sing near the garden fence, 3 seeds to the west, before the sun sleeps. 3 targets. A neighborhood. A timeline." The hit occurred exactly 3 days later. It's not mysticism. It's mathematics. Every code, every phrase, every signal translates to real actions beyond the walls. Cook County is not just where criminals are confined, it's where the next chapter of Chicago's street war is written. Political ties and shadow deals. But the influence of Cook County's underground doesn't end with gangs. Politics, too, bends around its shadow. Chicago's power networks, from aldermanic seats to neighborhood contracts, often intersect with families and associates of those serving time. Campaign contributions flow from legitimate community groups quietly financed by laundering operations connected to jailed leaders. In a 2021 investigative report by the Chicago Reporter, federal auditors flagged suspicious donations to several local political campaigns traced back to community outreach initiatives that, on paper, supported anti-violence programs. In reality, those programs were controlled by former gang affiliates coordinating with inmates for access and influence. One political consultant interviewed under anonymity said, "You don't win certain districts without their blessing. The same guys running blocks run votes. And they take orders from inside." Cook County Jail doesn't just produce inmates, it produces leverage. And in Chicago, leverage is power. The streets that listen. On the south and west sides, the jail is mythology. Every block has someone who's been through it, someone who came back with scars, or status. For many young men, incarceration is not deterrence, it's initiation. A rite of passage that proves loyalty and brings recognition. Sociologists from the University of Chicago Crime Lab found that in high gang density neighborhoods, incarceration increased social prestige among certain groups, not shame. Inside the jail, they build connections. Outside, those connections become networks of protection, business, and revenge. In one interview, a former inmate described it perfectly. Cook County's like college. You go in dumb, come out with a major, drugs, money, or murder. The jail doesn't just feed the streets. It educates them. The prison-to-street pipeline. Every year, thousands of inmates cycle through Cook County Jail, most awaiting trial, not yet convicted, but already changed. When they return to their neighborhoods, they bring more than trauma. They bring knowledge, names, numbers, and alliances forged in confinement. Those alliances become the foundation of new gangs, hybrid factions that mix Latin kings with gangster disciples, vice lords with newer street crews. Investigators call these fusion gangs. They're unpredictable, less bound by traditional loyalty, and more driven by money than identity. A 2023 Illinois State Police report documented a 40% rise in hybrid crews linked to Cook County Jail alumni. The report concluded, the jail has evolved into a recruitment and coordination hub, producing leaders fluent in both street and institutional control. The violence that erupts in Chicago's neighborhoods is, in part, an echo of decisions made inside those walls, long before the first gunshot is fired. Family, fear, and the untouchables. For families, the jail's influence is inescapable. Mothers receive coded letters to deliver messages. Girlfriends smuggle in SIM cards during visits. Brothers collect money on Cash App to pay debts owed behind bars. One mother, interviewed by the Marshall Project, broke down describing her son's orders from Division 10. He said if I didn't drop the money, something would happen to him. I didn't ask what. I just paid. Even innocent relatives become pawns in the economy of fear. The gangs don't need to threaten directly, the fear of consequence does the work for them. Meanwhile, certain inmates, the untouchables, operate above the chaos. They mediate disputes between factions, balancing the jail's internal politics with street-level demands. These are the men investigators call ghost brokers. They have no rank but hold the power to start or stop wars with a phone call. Their influence stretches from the cell block to the city council, invisible, silent, and absolute. The police and the paradox. Law enforcement in Chicago has long fought an impossible battle, to dismantle networks that are half inside, half outside the system. Every major gang takedown, from the Latin Kings to the four-corner hustlers, eventually leads back to a cell inside Cook County. Even when leaders are transferred to federal facilities, they continue to direct operations through coded messages relayed by newer inmates. A 2022 Chicago Police Department memo admitted, arrests no longer disrupt operations. They reorganize them. This paradox, that incarceration strengthens the criminal structure, is the very engine that keeps Chicago's underworld alive. Cook County isn't a brake on crime. It's the gearbox. The echoes of power. At night, if you drive past the massive complex off 26th Street, it looks quiet, floodlights, silence, order. But behind those walls, voices hum in coded rhythm. Decisions, debts, and deals shaping the pulse of a city that never truly sleeps. It's not the screams or the sirens that haunt Chicago. It's the whispers from inside. The jail's influence bleeds into everything, from street corners to courtrooms, from elections to economy. It's the unseen architecture beneath the city's skyline, a network built not on freedom, but on control. And every time another inmate steps through those gates, the echo grows louder. Epilogue, the cycle continues. Cook County Jail was meant to be a stopgap, a place to hold the accused until justice was served. Instead, it became something else, a shadow institution, older and more enduring than the systems meant to contain it. Reformers come and go. Investigations fade. But the walls remain, humming with secrets, deals, and voices that refuse to die. Because in Chicago, power doesn't end when the bars close. It just changes address.